It's partly James Cameron's fault, but it's also because people can't see past what made Terminator successful. Everyone looked at the bare bones. They go, "Oh, you just add more robots," and then you do a twist on it.
It's actually an alloy compound.
Well, so that's what I mean. Is they said, "Oh, that's all he did. He just added a liquid one. What else can we do? Magnets. All right." And then they just kept going. I was like, "No, he kind of more or less just remade 2, but then added a cool bit to it and like realized the world that he built around it and how one movie actually affected the other. And then the rest of them, they just kept trying to remake the movie."
Well, yeah,
that's why they're so awful.
After Terminator 2, it was like they locked someone in a room and they made it so that way they weren't allowed to watch the previous film, but they had to write a movie. So I love that James Cameron is such a detail-oriented psychopath that he explains everything in his movies and gives you a blueprint. So if you ever want to make more, I gave you all the tools to do it, baby. And then everyone ignores all those things. So like Terminator 2, they're like, the reason he's got blades is not only the narrative aspect of if he just became a gun or a nuke or whatever, it would be boring.
Right.
It would ruin the narrative tension. But also because the technology, he can't do complex things. And so the person who making the next movie said, how can we one-up T-1000? She turns her arm into a gun. A giant nuclear reactor in her chest. Like all the things that he said you're not allowed to do in Terminator, they just did because they didn't know how to up the ante in a normal way.
Because they're not James Cameron.
Then they just ignore all the details that he put in there and said, fuck it.
They're not James Cameron.
How did they get around the T-1000 not being flesh covered when it came back?
What do you mean?
Well, like, it had to be, in the first movie, it had to be flesh could only come back.
Well,
but
right.
The reason the Terminator could come back is because it was covered
I think
in flesh.
because it could mimic flesh.
Is that what it was?
Maybe.
I never thought about that.
No, that's actually a really good point. So, but you bring up a larger point about the Terminator franchise is it doesn't matter because the more that you think about that stuff, the more you're just like, they got rid of that rule in the other one and then just moved on.
I don't think the flesh was a limiting factor.
Was it?
I think the flesh was so that way they could disguise themselves to get into human.
Well, no, they said you can't send any metal or any weapons back.
Yeah,
and that's how the
That's why
Terminators.
he always shows up naked.
Yeah, the Terminators had to be coated in skin to,
but they were already coated in skin.
Which I mean, so like if they really wanted to, they would just put a gun in a cadaver and then send that back in time. I get I mean, that's a cool concept.
This universe doesn't make any sense.
They're also pretty. He's pretty upfront about how much energy it takes to fire that machine off. So that way you can't just blast. Like I think
that was true.
You know they're gonna find weapons.
I think in the first or second Terminator movie, they talk about how there were two surges before they stormed the camp. There's like some art book or whatever that James Cameron consulted on or whatever for the concept art, and they talked about how as the soldiers were storming the camp, there were 2 surges of power. One was the T-800 going back to try and kill Sarah Connor, and the other was T-1000 going back to, in case the T-800
what about the others
failed.
From Terminator 3?
Those are left, again, details that were ignored.
This is what I mean. Is like it validates every rule that it's set up.
So do you think the Alien franchise is on the same path now with Terminator? Because it's kind of the same thing.
I don't even know what the Alien franchise is.
I
haven't seen Covenant, but
from what I heard about Covenant, the best part about it is that it makes Prometheus a good movie.
I refuse to believe that.
Yeah.
I have no such thing.
Unless it's the Terminator
It's
syndrome.
exactly what you're saying with Terminator, right? Yeah, go see it, then you'll probably like Prometheus better.
Except this one makes me a little bit more sad because it's Ridley Scott who made Alien.
Yeah.
And now he's making Alien Covenant, so you
lost
have no one else to blame.
He lost